I want to bring in Associate Professor Nigel Marks now, who's a physicist from Curtin University. Thanks for joining us, Nigel. First up, do you agree with the former Chief Scientist, Dr. Alan Finkel?
Absolutely. I found myself nodding along with everything he was saying.
And so what's stopping us?
I think it's our history. Australia, we have a lot of coal and gas and a bit of oil. And in the past, we've always been able to use that to generate our electricity. And so we just kept pumping out CO2 on the global scale, on a per capita basis. We're not a great country, if the truth be known. But if we're going to try and join the rest of the world, then if we don't consider nuclear, we've got very few good options.
Nuclear energy gives us a very similar kind of energy to coal electricity, in that you have big plants that pump out an enormous amount of electricity all the time. You can't really turn them off easily or ramp them up quickly. They're your base load power. So they just don't have the emissions, though, in a nuclear reactor. You don't have those carbon dioxide emissions. So it's a pretty handy like-for-like replacement, isn't it? Coal out, nuclear in.
Exactly, and that's precisely what is happening in the UK, which is probably the most advanced country in my reading for figuring out how you practically get to net zero. They've closed all of their coal now, and they only turn them on when they absolutely have to. And they're building new nuclear power plants. So I think it's very interesting to see what our ancestral, our cultural cousins are doing.
Now, Alan Finkel also spoke about small modular reactors. That's something we looked at in the documentary. This is where nuclear energy is heading, with these factory fabricated smaller nuclear plants that can be racked up. If you want a bigger plant, you can rack up a few of them alongside each other. Do you believe that that's the future and that would be the obvious way in for Australia?
I think it's more of a medium-term option. The SMRs, as people like to call them, they're certainly very interesting, but you can't go and buy one now. And the lead time for new nuclear is typically, it's an order 10 years or so. So I think for Australia, we'd be better off going with something that actually works. I think that gets forgotten in the current debate. Things that exist are actually good technologies, and then keep a close eye on the SMRs for the next generation.
Yeah, and the obvious place would be somewhere where you've decommissioned coal-fired power, because all the transmission is there, and obviously there's a community looking for jobs as well, I suppose. Just let me finally ask you this question, because obviously if we could have wind and solar energy that's limitless, if it could power our country, of course we'd all go for that. In fact, surveys show most Australians want that. The problem is, the more you delve into this, the more you see that that's impossible. We can't store the energy. Am I being too pessimistic? Is it possible to power a modern economy on renewables and storage?
Well, no one's done it yet. Germany thinks they can. So they have turned their back on nuclear, as is well known. And they also don't want to do carbon capture and storage. So they think they can, but it's a big gamble, if you ask me. It's very unclear that it will work. And of course, a country like Germany, if it doesn't work, they'll just buy electricity, often nuclear energy, from their neighbours.
Well, that's exactly right. They've tried to do this. Now they're buying more gas, burning more coal, and bringing in nuclear-generated electricity from France. So at this stage, we'd have to give them a fail, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. And this is why, for a country like Australia, and here in Western Australia, it's even it's more specific. We need to be self-sufficient. We can't just connect into someone else to keep the lights on. And about a third of the world at the moment is going through an energy crisis, and it's not pretty. So people need to remember the lights need to stay on. It's a terrible thing when you don't have enough power to run your society, either for your houses or for transportation.
Indeed, I could not agree more. Thanks for joining us, Nigel.
My pleasure.
Nigel Marks there, Associate Professor at Curtin University in Perth. Fascinating debate. We'll keep on it.